The Secret Doctrine by Elena Petrovna Blavatsky, a facsimile of the original edition of 1888, printed by the Cunningham Press, Alhambra, California. Volume 1, Cosmogenesis. Part 2, The Evolution of Symbolism in its approximate order, with explanatory sections. Section 4, Chaos, Theos, Cosmos. These three are the containment of space, or as a learned Kabbalist has defined it, space, the all-containing uncontained, is the primary embodiment of simply unity, boundless extension. Note, see New Aspects of Life by Henry Pratt, M.D., end of note. But he asks again, boundless extension of what? And makes the correct reply, the unknown container of all, the unknown first cause. This is a most correct definition and answer, most esoteric and true, from every aspect of occult teaching. Space, which, in their ignorance and iconoclastic tendency to destroy every philosophic idea of old, the modern wiseacres have proclaimed an abstract idea and a void, is in reality the container and the body of the universe with its 7 principles. It is a body of limitless extent, whose principles, in occult phraseology, each being in its turn a septenary, manifest in our phenomenal world only the grossest fabric of their subdivisions. No one has ever seen the elements in their fullness, the doctrine teaches. We have to search for our wisdom in the original expressions of the primeval people and in their synonyms. Even the latest of them, the Jews, show in their Kabbalistic teachings this idea. For example, the 7-headed serpent of space called the Great Sea. In the beginning the Alchim created the heavens and the earth. The 6 Sephiroth, they created 6, and on these all things are based. And those 6 depend upon the 7 forms of the crania up to dignity of all dignities. Sephiroth Utah 1, paragraph 16, part 2, volume 2, the ancient divisions and the mystic numbers. Now, wind, air, and spirit have ever been synonymous with every nation. Pneuma, spirit, and animus, the wind, with the Greeks, spiritus and ventus with the Latins, were convertible terms even if dissociated from the original idea of the breath of life. In the forces of science we see but the material effect of the spiritual affect of one or the other of the 4 primordial elements, transmitted to us by the 4th rays, as we shall transmit ether, or rather the gross subdivision of it in its fullness to the 6th root rays. This is explained in the text of this and the following book. Chaos is called senseless by the ancients, because it represented and contained in itself chaos and space being synonymous, all the elements in their rudimentary, undifferentiated state. They made of ether, the 5th element, the synthesis of the other 4, for the aether of the Greek philosophers is not its dregs, of which indeed they knew more than science does now, which are rightly enough supposed to act as an agent for many forces that manifest on earth. Their aether was the akasha of the Hindus. The ether accepted in physics is but one of its subdivisions on our plane, the astral light of the Kabbalists, with all its evil as well as good effects. On account of the essence of aether, or the unseen space, being held divine as the supposed veil of deity, it was regarded as the medium between this life and the next one. The ancients considered that when the directing active intelligences, the gods, retired from any portion of ether in our space, the 4 realms which they superintend, then that particular place was left in the possession of evil, so called by reason of the absence of the good from it. Quote, the existence of spirit in the common mediator, the ether, is denied by materialism, while theology makes of it a personal God. But the Kabbalist holds that both are wrong, saying that in ether the elements represent but matter, the blind cosmic forces of nature, while spirit represents the intelligence which directs them. The Arian, Hermetic, Orphic, and Pythagorean cosmogonical doctrines as well as those of Sanchoniathon and Berosus, are all based upon one irrefutable formula, meaning that the aether and chaos, or, in the Platonic language, mind and matter, were the two primeval and eternal principles of the universe, utterly independent of anything else. The former was the all-vivifying intellectual principle, the chaos, a shapeless liquid principle, without form or sense, from the union of which two sprung into existence the universe, or rather the universal world, the first androgynous deity, the chaotic matter becoming its body, and ether its soul. According to the phraseology of a fragment of Hermes, chaos, from this union with the spirit, obtaining sense, shone with pleasure, and thus was produced the protogonos, the firstborn, light. Note: Damascus in the Theogony calls it dis, the disposer of all things. See Courier, Ancient Fragments, page 314. This is the universal trinity based on the metaphysical conceptions of the ancients who, reasoning by analogy, made of man, who is a compound of intellect and matter, the microcosm of the macrocosm, or great universe. This whole quote was from Isis Unveiled. Nature abhors vacuum, said the Peripatetics, who comprehended, perhaps, though materialists in their way, why Democritus, with his instructor Leucippus, taught that the first principles of all things contained in the universe were atoms and a vacuum. The latter means simply latent deity or force, which, before its first manifestation when it became will, communicating the first impulse to these atoms, was the great nothingness, Ein Sof, or no thing, was therefore to every sense a void or chaos. That chaos, however, became the soul of the world, according to Plato and the Pythagoreans. According to Hindu teaching, deity in the shape of aether, akasha, pervades all things, and it was called therefore by the theurgists the living fire, the spirit of light, and sometimes Magnes. It was the highest deity itself which, according to Plato, built the universe in the geometrical form of the dodecahedron, and its first begotten was born of chaos and primordial light, the central sun. This firstborn, however, was only the aggregate of the host of the builders, the first constructive forces, who are called in ancient cosmogonies the ancients, born of the deep or chaos, and the first point. Here is the tetragrammaton, so called, at the head of the 7 lower Sephiroth. This was the belief of the Chaldees. These Chaldeans, wrote Philo, the Jew, speaking very flippantly of the first instructors of his ancestors, were of opinion that the cosmos, among the things that exist, in brackets question mark, is a single point, either being itself God, Theos, or that in it is God, comprehending the soul of all things. See his Migration of Abraham. Chaos, Theos, Cosmos are but the 3 aspects of their synthesis, space. One can never hope to solve the mystery of this tetractys by holding to the dead letter even of the old philosophies as now extant. But even in these, chaos, Theos, Cosmos equals space, are identified in all eternity as the one unknown space, the last word about which will perhaps never be known before our 7th round. Nevertheless, the allegories and metaphysical symbols about the primeval and perfect cube are remarkable even in the exoteric Puranas. There also Brahma is the Theos, evolving out of chaos, or the great deep, the waters over which spirit equals space, personified by Ayana. The spirit moving over the face of the future boundless cosmos, is silently hovering in the first hour of reawakening. It is also Vishnu, sleeping on Anatasaka, the great serpent of eternity, of which Western theology, ignorant of the Kabbalah, the only key that opens the secrets of the Bible, has made the devil. It is the first triangle of the Pythagorean triad, the god of the 3 aspects, before it transformed through its perfect quadrature of the infinite circle into the 4-faced Brahma. Of him who is and yet is not, from the not being, eternal cause, is born the being Purusha, says Manu, the legislator. In Isis Unveiled it is said that, in the Egyptian mythology, Knef, the eternal unrevealed God, is represented by a snake emblem of eternity encircling a water urn, with its head hovering over the waters, which it incubates with its breath. In this case, the serpent is the Agathodaemon, the good spirit. In its opposite aspect, it is the Kakodaemon, the bad one. In the Scandinavian Eddas, the honeydew, the fruit of the gods and of the creative busy Yggdrasil, bees, falls during the hours of night, when the atmosphere is impregnated with humidity, and in the northern mythologies, as the passive principle of creation, it typifies the creation of the universe out of water. This dew is the astral light in one of its combinations, and possesses creative as well as destructive properties. In the Chaldean legend of Berossus, Oannes or Dagon, the man-fish instructing the people, shows the infant world created out of water, and all beings originating from this prima materia. Moses teaches that only earth and water can bring a living soul, and we read in the scriptures that herbs could not grow until the Eternal caused it to rain upon earth. In the Mexican Popol Vuh, man is created out of mud or clay, terre glaise, taken from under the water. Brahma creates the great Muni, or first man, seated on his lotus, only after having called into being spirits who thus enjoyed over mortals a priority of existence, and he creates him out of water, air, and earth. Alchemists claim that the primordial or pre-Adamic earth, when reduced to its first substance, is in the second stage of transformation like clear water, the first being the alkahest proper. The primordial substance is said to contain within itself the essence of all that goes to make up man. It has not only all the elements of his physical being, but even the breath of life itself in a latent state ready to be awakened. This it derives from the incubation of the Spirit of God upon the face of the waters, chaos. In fact, this substance is chaos itself. From this is what the Paracelsus claimed to be able to make his homunculi, and this is why Thales, the great natural philosopher, maintained that water was the principle of all things in nature. Note: with the Greeks, the river gods, all of them the sons of the primeval ocean, chaos in its masculine aspect, were the respective ancestors of the Hellenic races. From them the ocean was the father of the gods, and thus they had anticipated in this connection the theories of Thales, as rightly observed by Aristotle. See Metaphors 1, 3, and 5. Job says in chapter 26, verse 5, that dead things are formed from under the waters, and inhabitants thereof. In the original text, instead of dead things, it is written dead Rephaim, giants or mighty primitive men, from whom evolution may one day trace our present race. In the primordial state of the creation, says Poliers, Mythology des Hindus, the rudimental universe, submerged in water, reposed in the bosom of Vishnu. Sprung from this chaos and darkness, Brahma, the architect of the world, poised on a lotus leaf, floated, moved, upon the waters, unable to discern anything but water and darkness. Perceiving such a dismal state of things, Brahma soliloquizes in consternation. Who am I? Whence came I? Then he hears a voice. Note: the spirit or hidden voice of the mantras, the active manifestation of the latent force or occult potency. End of note. Direct your thoughts to Bhagavat. Brahma, rising from his natatory position, seats himself upon the lotus in an attitude of contemplation, and reflects upon the Eternal who, pleased with this evidence of piety, disperses the primeval darkness and opens his understanding. After this, Brahma issues from the universal egg, infinite chaos, as light, for his understanding is now opened, and he seats himself to work. He moves on the eternal waters with the Spirit of God within himself, and in his capacity of mover of the waters he is Vishnu, or Narayana. This is exoteric, of course, yet in its main idea as identical as possible with the Egyptian cosmogony, which shows in its opening sentences Athtor, Note: orthography of the Archaic Dictionary, or Mother Night, which represents illimitable darkness as the primeval element which covered the infinite abyss, animated by water, and the universal spirit of the eternal dwelling alone in chaos. Similarly, in the Jewish scriptures, the history of the creation opens with the Spirit of God and his creative emanation, another deity. Note: we do not mean the current or accepted Bible, but the real Jewish one, now explained Kabbalistically. End of note. The Zohar teaches that it is the primordial elements, the trinity of fire, air, and water, the four cardinal points, and all the forces of nature which form collectively the voice of the will, Memrab, or the word, the Logos, of the absolute silent all. The indivisible point, limitless and unknowable, spreads itself over the endless space and thus forms a veil, the Mula Prakriti of Parabrahm, which conceals this absolute point, vide info. In the cosmogonies of all the nations, it is the architects synthesized by Demiurgus in the Bible, the Elohim, who fashion Cosmos out of chaos, and who are the collective Theos, male, female, spirit and matter. By a series, Yom, of foundations, Hasoth, the Alchim, caused earth and heaven to be. Genesis chapter 2, verse 4. In the Bible it is first Alchim, then Java Alchim, and finally Jehovah, after the separation of the sexes in chapter 4 of Genesis. It is noticeable that nowhere, except in the later, the last cosmogonies of our fifth race, is the ineffable and unutterable name. Note: it is unutterable for the simple reason that it is non-existent. It never was a name, nor any word at all, but an idea that could not be expressed. A substitute was created for it in the century preceding our era. End of note. The symbol of the unknown deity, which was used only in the mysteries used in connection with the creation of the universe. It is the movers, the runners, the theoi, from thein, to run, who do the work of formation, the messengers of the manvantaric law, who have now become in Christianity the messengers, Malakim, and it seems the same in Hinduism or early Brahmanism. For it is not Brahma who creates in the Rig Veda, but the Prajapati, the lords of being, who are the rishis. The word rishi, according to Professor Mahidu Kunti, being connected with the word to move, to lead on, applied to them in their terrestrial character when, as patriarchs, they led their hosts on the 7 rivers. Moreover, the very word God in the singular embracing all the gods, or Theos from Theoi, came to the quote superior unquote civilized nations from a strange source, one entirely and preeminently phallic, as the sincere, open-spoken Lingham of India. The attempt to derive God from the Anglo-Saxon synonym good is an abandoned idea, for in no other language, in all of which the term varies more or less from the Persian coda down to the Latin deus, has an instance been found of a name of God being derived from the attribute of goodness. To the Latin races it comes from the Aryan diaos, the day, to the Slavonian from the Greek Bacchus, Bagbog, and to the Saxon races directly from the Hebrew Yod or Jod. The latter is the Hebrew number letter 10, male and female, and Jod, the phallic hook, hence the Saxon good, and the Germanic Gott, and the English God. This symbolic term may be said to represent the creator of physical, quote, humanity, unquote, on the terrestrial plane. But surely it had nothing to do with the formation or creation of spirit, gods, or cosmos. Chaos, Theos, Cosmos, the triple deity, is all in all. Therefore it is said to be male and female, good and evil, positive and negative, the whole series of contrasted qualities. When latent in pralaya, it is incognizable and becomes the unknowable deity. It can be known only in its active functions, hence as a matter force and living spirit. the correlations and outcome or the expression of the visible plane of the ultimate and ever-to-be-unknown unity. In its turn, this triple unit is the producer of the four primary elements, which are known in our visible terrestrial nature as the seven, so far the 5 elements, each divisible into 49 or 7 times 7 sub-elements, with about 70 of which chemistry is acquainted. Reader's note. Back in 1888, chemistry knew of about 70. End of reader's note. Note on the 4 primary elements. The cosmic tabernacle of Moses, erected by him in the desert, was square, representing the 4 cardinal points and the 4 elements, as Josephus tells his readers. Antiquities 1:8, chapter 22. It is the idea taken from the pyramids in Egypt and in Tyre, where the pyramids became pillars. The genii or angels have their abodes in the 4 respective points. See section 14, the 4 elements. End of note. Every cosmical element, such as fire, air, water, earth, partaking of the qualities and defects of their primaries, are in their nature good and evil, force or spirit and matter, etc., etc., and each, therefore, is at one and the same time life and death, health and disease, action and reaction. See section 14, the 4 elements. They are ever and constantly forming matter under the never-ceasing impulse of the one element, the incognizable, represented in the world of phenomena by aether, or the immortal gods who give birth and life to all. In the philosophical writings of Solomon ben Yehuda ibn Gebirol, translated in Mr. Isaac May's Kabbalah, just published, it is said on the structure of the universe. Our Yehuda began, it is written, Elohim said, "Let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters. Come see, at the time that the Holy created the world." He created 7 heavens above, 7 earths below, 7 seas, 7 days, 7 rivers, 7 weeks, 7 years, 7 times, and 7,000 years that the world has been. The Holy is the 7th of all, etc. Page 415. This, besides showing a strange identity with the cosmogony of the Puranas, for example Vishnu Purana, first book, corroborates with regard to number 7 all our teachings as briefly given in esoteric Buddhism. The Hindus have an endless series of allegories to express this idea. In the primordial chaos before it became developed into the 7 oceans, Sapta Samudra, emblematical of the 7 gunas, conditioned qualities composed of 3 gunas, Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas, see Puranas, lie latent both Amrita, immortality, and Visha, poison, death, evil. This allegory is found in the churning of the ocean by the gods. Amrita is beyond any guna, for it is unconditioned per se. Yet when fallen into the phenomenal creation it got mixed up with evil, chaos with the latent Theos in it, and before Cosmos was evolved. Hence, one finds Vishnu standing here for eternal law, periodically calling forth Cosmos into activity, churning out of the primitive ocean, boundless chaos, the Amrita of eternity reserved only for the gods and devas, and he has to employ in the task Nagas and Asuras, demons in exoteric Hinduism. The whole allegory is highly philosophical, and we find it repeated in every philosophical system. Plato, having fully embraced the ideas of Pythagoras, who had brought them from India, compiled and published them in a form more intelligible than the mysterious numerals of the Greek sage. Thus the cosmos is the sun, with Plato having for his father and mother the divine thought and matter. The Egyptians, says Dunlap, distinguish between an older and younger Horus, the former the brother of Osiris, the latter the son of Osiris and Isis. The first is the idea of the world remaining in the demiurgic mind, born in darkness before the creation of the world. The second Horus is this idea going forth from the Logos, becoming clothed with matter and assuming an actual existence. Note, Movies, Phoenizer, 268, end of note. The mundane God, eternal, boundless, young and old, of winding form, say the Chaldean oracles. This winding form is a figure to express the vibratory motion of the astral light, with which the ancient priests were perfectly well acquainted, though its name was invented by the Martinists. Now cosmolatry has the finger of scorn pointed at its superstitions by modern science, which ought, however, as advised by French savants before laughing at it, to remodel entirely its own system of cosmopneumatological education, satis eloquentia, sapiente parvum. Cosmolatry, like pantheism, may be made to yield in its ultimate expression the words applied to Vishnu. He is only the ideal cause of the potencies to be created in the work of creation, and from him proceed the potencies to be created after they have become the real cause. Save that one ideal cause, there is no other to which the world can be referred. Through the potency of that cause, every created thing comes by its proper nature. Original Sanskrit texts, Part 4, pages 32 and 33. Next section is Section 5 on the hidden deity, its symbols and glyphs.